December 18th, 2014. That was the day I first made my attempt to hike the Appalachian Trail. We're 3 years since then. What have I learned in those 3 years? Today we'll discuss that on the Legend. This is Teardrop, and welcome to New to the Wild. What's up, everybody? You guys know who this is. I'm JB Gunner, aka Teardrop, and today we are going to discuss what I have learned in 3 years on the Appalachian Trail. It's been a lot. So let's start off. Kind of out of breath, just ran down the stairs. Now, when I first came out onto the Appalachian Trail, or even began planning for the Appalachian Trail, needless to say, I was dumb as shit. Well, let me rephrase that. I was ignorant as shit in terms of the Appalachian Trail. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned through trial and error. And you'll learn some of those things that I learned along the way. Now, what is the number one thing that I have learned on the Appalachian Trail? It's going to surprise you. The answer is the difference between the internet community, hiking community, and the real life hiking community. There's no secret about it. I despise the internet hiking community. Not you guys. You guys are great. But let's just be real. The internet hiking community is filled with people that don't hike. But yet, whether it's because they hiked a long time ago and they stopped hiking now and are bitter about it, or it's people planning for hikes. A lot of times, you don't see people that are hiking on the internet community because they're fucking busy hiking. Just being honest. Well, what I've learned is to not put the two communities into the same. The internet community is literally as destructive as it could be. Now, I'll talk more about them later on when I do the hike your own hike video, where I talk about some of the internet community in terms of hiking. But the people that you meet out there are some of the most kind, best people you'll ever meet. I typically don't have any issues with the people I meet because the internet hiking community is pussies. They literally will troll you to death. They literally will tell you all the things they'll do to you when they'll see you. Well, at least with me they do. But yet on the trail, I tend to have some of the best experiences. Now, there's a couple exceptions to that, but they weren't real hikers. I had one situation with a gentleman an older gentleman that you guys may remember from New to the Wild, where he wasn't a real hiker. He came out, he was essentially a drunk, and me and him did not get along well. We started off as friends. I started off trying to help him, but unfortunately, he's got a big mouth. He pops off at the mouth too much, and he's a fucking liar. So, for me, it was best that, and he was a thief. Just flat out, he was a thief. But we're not going to elaborate too much on that. The hiking community in itself on the trail is just better than the internet hiking community. That's the number one lesson I've learned. The number two lesson I've learned along these years is do not skimp on very much. When I first came out, I believed, okay, let's just start with the hiking itself. I believed you could actually hike without spending a lot of money. I thought that people that went into towns and couldn't refrain from spending money were pussies. Well, that's not true. Because, maybe it is true, but I'm a pussy then too. The thought process, as you saw in my money video, the thought process, the belief system that you can just go and have this strong willpower and skip towns and not worry about it, that's not true at all. Number three, documenting the Appalachian Trail while on the trail is a lot harder than you think because it's almost impossible to get your uploads through. The internet speeds along the Appalachian Trail at these hostels are so shitty, it's almost impossible to do. That's why I cannot understand when I get a thumbs down on a video. You motherfuckers do not understand what I went through to give you that video. Just because I said some things in that video, maybe politically, that you didn't like, to show that lack of appreciation knowing that I went through all that trouble, knowing that Bigfoot went through all that trouble, knowing that Loner went through all that trouble is disgusting to me. And just another X to the internet hiking community. It's fucking disgusting. Now, another thing I learned is that skimping on gear. Oh, first of all, let's get back to what I just was talking about. The money situation. I learned it's very important. I learned that going on a shoestring budget is not doable for most hikers without living like you're homeless. The next thing I learned is that getting Walmart gear or skimping on gear, for the most part, shouldn't be done. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong. If you're hiking in the summer, there's nothing wrong with going and getting one of them $40, 40 to 50 degree bags from Walmart because they're little and compact. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't do it, but there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with Walmart poles, but I will tell you now that my REI poles never broke. They still aren't breaking. They never even bent. So my theory before that the poles would pretty much break at the same rate is incorrect at this moment. Because now that I have a little bit more expensive poles, I can tell you they're not breaking like that. So I've learned that skimping on poles, yeah, you can do it. Fuck, you can walk around with a stick if you want. But skimping on some items, on a large amount of items, cannot be done. Can you go with a Walmart headlamp? Sure you can. Do I think black diamonds are better? Much better. Much better. Plus, you got the little red light. The black diamonds are much better. Now, shoes. Is it very important to have good shoes? It's the most important thing. If your shoes are not comfortable, and let me make this clear, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I had a pair of $40 Columbia trail runners a couple years back. To be honest, they were far more comfortable than my Solomons I had this year. I'm just being honest. But another thing I've learned on the Appalachian Trail throughout this time is you probably will go through 3 or 4 pairs of shoes. That's just the truth. So you may think in your head, I can make it with only 1 or 2. That's not true. Because once these fucking things, because it's not just when the holes form. You gotta realize the bottom of them motherfuckers are wearing out. And so now the rocks are sticking in and poking your feet. It's not about how the shoe looks. It's about the tread that's on the bottom of them. It's about how much shoe is at the bottom of it. Always get inserts for your shoes. That is also something I've learned. I've also learned that doing drop boxes throughout the whole trail is it's not practical, and you'll get tired of it. It's not a good idea. It may be cheaper to actually just buy food on the Appalachian Trail. Another thing I've learned is that doing the fast food thing is doable, particularly if you're there in the earlier months like March and April. It's doable. You can grab 25 double cheeseburgers out of Franklin and take it with you and have them for 5 days. Now, what you cannot do, here's another lesson I learned. Do not try to do it with Subway. Subway sucks when you do it that way. My Subway was in my backpack for 1 day. Just until I got to the shelter. And it was horrible. It was horrible. Don't try it. Do not try it. What else have I learned? I have learned that the Appalachian Trail is harder than okay, here's something else. You could sit at home and plan and read and learn all you want, but I'm telling you now, it's nothing like being out there. Being on the Appalachian Trail, hiking it is the hardest thing I've ever done. And for a lot of people, they'll tell you the same exact thing. It takes a lot of mental power, mental ability, mental strength to be able to do this. It is hard. When you're at home looking at the books and looking at the elevations, even the things that look like they're small elevations, in real life, they are fucking huge. I'm telling you, you people that have not been out there yet and you're just looking at your book and you're looking at the elevation gains and you're saying, this is no problem. Trust me, it's a fucking problem. This is not easy at all. And you will find that out in your first 3 days on this Appalachian Trail. It's not easy. It is not easy whatsoever. It will literally be the hardest thing you've ever done. If you don't have experience hiking everywhere else and this is your first time really out there hiking mountains, and even if you do have experience, a lot of people will tell you, The Appalachian Trail has far much more ups and downs than any of the other trails. So even if you've done the PCT, that still doesn't prepare you for the Appalachian Trail. That's why on the PCT you can hike 20 and 30 miles a day. On Appalachian Trail's a motherfucker. Even if you've done the whole Appalachian Trail, by the time you get to the Whites and you start doing the fucking Whites, you're not hiking 30 miles a day. Even if you were hiking 30 miles a day before that. The Whites are a motherfucker. And I've never even been there. But I know people that know people that know people. You see what I'm saying? Another thing. Hostels. You may want to skip. Here's something I'm going to be honest about. I bragged a lot about being in cabins instead of hostels. You don't want to skip hostels. Hostels is part of the experience. It is. It is part of the experience. And you want to experience everything. Take every blue blaze off the trail and go see those things that are 0.3 off the trail, the towers that are 0.4 off the trail. Go see them all. What are you in a hurry for? You're going to be out here 6 fucking months. The approach trail, do it. Why? Especially if you're only going to be out here once. Why pass it up? You're hiking 2,200 miles. Why are you crying about 8.8? What else have I learned? Don't be afraid to hike inside the bubble. It's not that bad. I mean, granted, hotels get booked, hostels are booked, and that's a struggle. That is a struggle. You don't realize how often these places are booked solid if you hike in the bubble. But at the same time, there's a certain camaraderie. You feel safer in the bubble. I typically hike outside the bubble. Don't be afraid of the bubble, but also don't be afraid to hike outside the bubble. I've also learned there's a lot of fucking simps on the trail. For you guys that do not understand what simp means, it means someone idolizing mediocre pussy. God damn, the amount of you people that pink blaze, and I'm going to talk about pink blazing coming up. I mean, seriously, the amount of dumb shit that you see these dudes do to chase down some pussy is ridiculous. And I look at these chicks and they're just smiling. They're just loving. They're eating it up. They're eating it up as you carry their fucking pack like a fucking lame. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. They should make your ass carry it. Seriously. The amount of pussy chasing that is out there is disgusting. Seriously. Here's another thing you'll learn about the Appalachian Trail. Everybody's a goddamn liar. Everybody's out there trying to be someone they're not. You can't believe anyone. Very few of us actually tell it like it is when we're out there. Everybody lives by this trail name. They're afraid to give their real name. They're afraid to talk about their marriages at home. You know what I'm saying. They're lying. That's something you'll learn, is that these people are characters in a story. Characters in a long story adventure. They're not real. So here's another thing you learn. The friendships that you typically cultivate, and I'm not saying all, I'm generalizing. On the Appalachian Trail, I look at like prisons, like relationships that you'll meet in prison. You know, all that, yeah, I'm going to holler at you when I'm on the outs, when I get out, when I get off the trail, whatever. And to be perfectly honest, it's not. That magic that you had together was only a trail thing. Period. In real life, none of us have anything in common. And maybe it's just me, because maybe it's just me, because the only friends that I've really remained having are my conservative friends that I met on the trail. But everybody else, pretty much I don't. I mean, there's a couple. So, what else? What I've learned. Don't let your home life interfere with your hike. Have it all situated before you go. My recommendation, leave your wife. Leave your husband. Leave your spouse. Leave your boyfriend. Leave your girlfriend, because that shit is fucking annoying. Do not go out there with situations at home that you got to attend to. I'm not joking. And I know some of you people in marriages and relationships are looking at me and saying, that's horrible advice. Yeah, to you. Because you're involved in it. You're not going to be the motherfucker that's out there getting them phone calls or having to deal with stress at home. It's on the trail. I've seen it happen with everybody. My good friend John Coker, who is literally one of the greatest dudes I've ever met, very, very much so a family man, him, family life, home life. I even saw it happen with him. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So John, if you're watching this, it wasn't bad. But it wasn't even his wife. It was his son at home, needing money and things like that. And the guy just kind of, he was constantly on the phone dealing with shit at home. I was too. My advice is don't bring that shit with you. You can't focus on Katahdin if you're worried about the fucking light bill. Can't focus on that shit at home if you're worried about arguing with your spouse. Just saying. Leave everything behind. Quit your job. Quit your relationships. Quit all that. It's not needed out there. In fact, it can only hurt you. You may think that having someone at home supporting you is the way to do it. No, not necessarily. Because that support lasts, it may last the whole time, but a lot of times it doesn't. You know, you get 4 or 5 months in and the person at home is like, but I really need you here. What do you do? What do you do if you make it to fucking New York or Maine or New Hampshire and your spouse at home says, I really need you at home. What do? You just hiked all that way. Do you give it up? Another thing I've learned is get your ass in shape before you get out there. Yes, the trail can get you in shape and it will get you in shape, but fuck. Mentally prepare yourself and physically prepare yourself. We all saw what happened with, what was his name? The guy that was going from fat to full of life. That was his tagline. He got out there and it was too much for him. And he said, I got to go home and get in shape. Now, my personal advice to him would have been stay out there. Every time I go out there, I lose 50 pounds in my first month. My personal advice would have been to stay out there. But, so what have I learned? Ultimately is that it's the most amazing and difficult thing I've ever done. I'm willing to give up anything in my life to make it happen, to be out there. I'll never give up. I've learned that. I have learned that the Appalachian Trail and ultimately the Triple Crown has shot to my #1 priority in my life. I'd give up anything for it. That's what I've learned. But I've also learned it's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. It's more difficult than being stabbed. It's more difficult than being shot. And yes, it's more difficult than prison. In its own way, it kind of is prison. You're surviving on very little. There's really no, you see, you have freedom, but you don't. It's not the same. But yet at the same time, it's the most freedom you'll ever have. Does that make sense? What I've learned is all of us are now joined together, bonded by the most magical thing in the entire world. And that's these trails. That's what I know. Fuck Disney World. This is the shit. I'm JB Gunner. Teardrop. That's what I've learned in 3 years on this Appalachian Trail. Here's the 3 more.
Bye, bitches.